Okay, perfect. All right, good afternoon, everyone. I'm at a disadvantage. You can see me and I can't see you, but that's okay. We'll work with it. If you guys have questions during the presentation, you can stop me and ask. I'm going to do a little bit of contextualizing why we're here and why we're meeting today, and spend some time going over the site and sharing my screen with you, so I'll disappear a couple times as well. I'm using a new format. It's called On Air by Google. It's still a Google Hangout, but what I'm doing right now is recording this presentation. So the good news about that is you can always go back and look at what we've discussed, or if you have a colleague missing, or if you've got some of your K2 colleagues that wanted to hear this but couldn't, they could watch this video, so that's great. In addition, the On Air has a question and answer, so if you guys wanted to go, I don't know, Cheryl, if you shared the link or not, but you guys can actually ask questions during the presentation. I can click on the Q&A, and I can look to see if you guys are asking me questions while the broadcast is happening. So that's another way of interacting with the presentation, is typing in questions, and I believe they will appear on the side of my screen while you guys are listening. So that's kind of a new feature that On Air allows me to do. All right, so today we're going to be talking about note-taking and active reading and how we can combine those two things. As you guys all are aware, or becoming more and more aware, Common Core, if I could boil it down to one central idea, it's about texts. If I could say that Common Core is about something, what is it asking kids to do? And I get this asked of me a lot, and I'm sure you do too as a teacher. People at restaurants or on the street will say, you know, if I run into them at like a public space, they'll say, you know, what do you think about the Common Core? What do you know about it? What is it doing to our children? All these sorts of things. And they hear lots of conversation from news media. They hear lots of things or read lots of things in the newspaper. But really, if I could boil it down, it's about getting kids ready to read texts at a very deep level. If you look at the standards, the speaking standards, the writing standards, the reading standards, they're all about doing something with text, whether it's reading multiple texts, reading a video, which is a type of text, reading a speech, another type of text, reading data, graphics, maps, charts. All of this is about them breaking down text. And I think we're moving from learning about just comprehension reading and getting kids through a text and getting them to memorize content to actually making meaning on their own, which requires them to do a bit more than just read for understanding. They're going to be required to break down text structure. They're going to be required to analyze the claims and arguments in a text. They're going to be asked to use evidence to support an inference that they make while reading. So everything is really locked in and connected to text. And it makes sense because as you go through school and then after, everything is about text. Everything in your career, everything in college is about reading something and doing something with that reading. So today we're going to talk about note-taking because that was the direction it sounds like you guys as a professional learning team is going. So I wanted to talk about note-taking and use the same context of deep reading and bring that into note-taking. I'm going to contextualize a little bit. When I was in school, note-taking was something that you had to do in order to survive. You either took notes or you didn't, and if you didn't get graded in your homework, and then you had to take a test. And you didn't do a good job because you didn't take the right kind of notes. And it was hard for me as a kid to know what are good notes, what are not good notes. Are good notes a lot of papers, lots of writing? It's a sea of words on a page to kids, and they don't know exactly what is and what isn't important. And a lot of times my teachers just wrote on the board, you need to read pages 22 to 35 and answer questions 1, 2, and 7 in the back of the unit. And so I did that, and I read through it the best I could, falling asleep half the time. I took notes on whatever I thought was important, made sure I copied down all the bold words, and wrote down every proper noun I found. And then I answered questions in the back of the book. And those usually I call those kinds of activities, breeding hunters and huntresses, where I was looking for words that matched the question. And if I found those words that matched the question, whether it was completely accurate or not, I would answer that in my notes, and then I would turn it in. And of course, I would get my stamp or my star, and my grade would go up because I did my work. The problem is that I didn't know what I was reading for. I didn't really have a purpose for what I was reading, and I didn't know anything that I read. So I was at the same place I started before I even took notes, not knowing what's important and not having any idea in my brain what you wanted me, the teacher, the teacher wanted me to know, the student. So today I wanted to start by talking about the importance of purpose-driven reading. And in the other thing I'm doing with Google On Air is I have created a couple of links. I think they're called showcases. And the showcases on the right-hand side, you should see some sort of language about purpose-driven reading. And this is a link to a web page on Literacy TA. I'm going to go over purpose-driven reading, but you guys can always go to it on your own devices, or you can link from it on the page right now. But purpose-driven reading is exactly what it sounds like. Our kids need some guidance when they sit down to read a text. Not all teachers give guidance, and it's not always going to be pretty, and it's not always going to work perfectly, and so we have to teach our kids how to come up with their own purposes when a purpose isn't given. But a purpose for reading helps students sift through all that black and white text, and it gives them an opportunity to know what you want them to understand as a result of reading this homework assignment or in-class assignment. Purpose-driven reading is like a prompt. It's basically the same thing, a writing task. But so often our brains go to narrative writing tasks that we don't think about expository writing tasks, the type that ask kids to look at texts and write summaries of texts and capture main ideas. If we give our kids a purpose before we give them the note assignment or the reading assignment, their notes are going to get better. It's that simple. We need to be able to give them a reading purpose for their notes. And I'm going to go ahead and share my screen with you to show you a couple practical ways that you can do that. What you're seeing is just a Google slide. I'm going to, I can't present it because I think it will take over the entire screen, but what I can do is I'll try to enlarge it if I can, so you can see it a little bit better. Well, you can see it really good now, can't you? How did I do that? Okay, let me bring it down just a little bit here. That's still too large. Sorry about that. I was hoping I could make it so perfect that you could see it without any problem.
That's good. Yeah.
Okay. All right, there you go. Just using different tools. Thank you for the feedback. So what I'm talking about is I've got 3 different ways that you can guide students through reading purpose. It's not a ton of extra work for you. It is a teeny bit more work for them, but the payoff is well worth the effort. First of all, if you're going to have kids, if you're teaching a science or history unit, those are the 2 that typically come with questions in the back of a section or unit. If you're going to teach, have them read something and teach from that section and then have them answer questions, I would recommend moving some of the most important questions forward so that they could use those to guide how they read. So that's under 1A. So if it's asking about maybe how something works, or what were the main features of a particular culture, or what were the elements behind this event, or these ideas, give them those questions first. Don't tell them they're in the book. Don't tell them that, oh, I'm pulling this question from the back and moving it to the front. Just give them that question for homework or in class. Get them to break it down. And then have them use that as their purpose for reading. I'm not asking you to tell kids to answer a question and just go look for it. That's different. I don't want you to give them a question and say, go answer it, go find it and answer it. I actually want them to come up with some sort of structure that they can use to take good, to take good notes. here are some structures for that. First of all, okay, come on. Have you ever had technical difficulties before?
Never.
Why are you doing this to me? Okay, I'm going to stop sharing my screen so that I can fix the mistake and you can't see me fixing it. What we want to do is give them some sort of structure. So I'm going to talk about a reading-writing plan. So the reading-writing plan is really great because it allows them to take notes through an outline. And some of you teachers who teach outlining notes really get excited about this because it's like, yeah, that's exactly the way I want my students to take notes. I think outlining is really important. I was never taught outlining very much in school, and so I wasn't big on teaching outlining when I first started teaching, but I've started to realize the power of it and how it helps kids capture the structure of the ideas as they appear in the text. But you don't have to worry about the kids building that structure if you use what's called a reading-writing plan. So if we take a prompt, whether you make it yourself using our prompt builder or just your own brain, or you use questions in the back of a text, we can then have our kids break those reading purposes down. If we break those purposes down, we can then have them build an outline from that purpose. And I'm going to show you what that looks like. Let's see here. So you should see a couple of screens here. I'm going to just stretch this one out a little bit. So now you should see just Literacy TA. And if you go to our skill library and we click on Reading Nonfiction, and then we click on Analyzing Text-Dependent Prompts, this is going to give us a strategy to break down a reading purpose or purpose-driven reading. Now you guys are in this area, 2, 3, 4, 5, and some of you are in 6th, and so you can use the middle, but if the 6th grade is too difficult, definitely go into 4, 5. And there is a strategy to help students break down a prompt. Very clear, very simple. It's an active reading strategy that helps students make meaning of their prompts. Oftentimes we'll tell kids what to do, we give it to them, they say, I don't understand, and then we tell them again what to do, we break it down for them, and they go, oh, why didn't you just say so in the first place? That happens all the time. So what we want to do is give them tools that they can use to break down their own prompts. So they would use this to circle the verb. So let's say it says summarize the 4 reasons why X people moved to Y region. So the word I'd want to circle is summarize, and then what I would want to underline are those 4 elements for why, or the 4 reasons why they had to move. So that gives me some understanding of, okay, I need to look for these people, and then I need to look for the 4 reasons. Now, I can go one step further and say, let's take what we've marked and let's put it into an outline. So I'm going to show you that right now. So I can ask my students to write the verb right here. So let's just say summarize. And then on this side, they can write the 4 reasons why X people needed to move to region Y. All right? And now I can use this space underneath. I can show you another one here to give you kind of an idea of what the outline looks like. I can use the space underneath to collect information from the text. You guys see this? So there's an A12, B12. So maybe this is a reason for them moving, and then here's some 2 details for that reason. And here's another reason, and here are 2 details. I'm just talking in general. I have no idea what text you're reading. You would have to know that to be able to guide them with a reading purpose. But once you give them a reading purpose, then you can give them a tool like this that they can use to take notes on the text that they're reading. So it starts with a reading plan or purpose that they then can turn into an outline, and then that outline is going to guide their reading. It's going to help them understand. Now let's go back to what I originally said about Common Core. Common Core is about reading text closely. So if I put on my whiteboard, your homework for tonight is to read 218 to 222 and be ready for a quiz tomorrow. Yes, I've given them the opportunity to read, but I haven't given them the opportunity to read closely. And I haven't structured that, and I haven't given them the support. And I'm going to frustrate myself because my kids are going to come back not knowing what they've read, and they're not going to score well on their quiz, so then they're going to be frustrated and feel bad about themselves. And then, of course, the snowball effect happens. So this is 2 steps right now that I'm outlining. You first start with your reading purpose. What am I reading for? Then you have them break down that reading purpose, which is right here. Oh, I got rid of it, sorry. You have them break down their reading purpose by circling and underlining information in that reading purpose. They then create an outline like this, and now they're ready to take notes. And you might say, John, this is taking forever. Like, every time they read? Well, I think in the beginning it's going to take longer because they're learning a process. They're learning an explicit process taught by you, modeled by you, how to take good notes. And it's text-focused. It's 100% on topic. They're not going to be taking notes on things you don't want them to know or understand. They're not going to be tripped up by all the little text features and bold words. So they are going to have a process that they can lean on and count on to help them take notes. Now let's go back to when I was a kid in school. If it wasn't for my mom, I really wouldn't know how to take notes. If it wasn't for my mom teaching me about note cards and index cards and all these kinds of things, I probably wouldn't have ever learned how to take notes. She taught me how to use the capital letters as main topics, the Roman numerals as main topics, the letter as subtopics, the numbers as details of those subtopics. She taught me all that. I was not taught that in school, and that's not a criticism to anyone. It's a reflection on my own practice and my own experiences, and it makes me say, well, if my mom was teaching me that and my kids aren't getting that at home, maybe I should probably be taking over my mom's responsibility and role that she filled for me in my education and start teaching my kids how to do something explicitly. And it works. It absolutely 100% works. Does it take a little bit more time? Yes. So how do you prep? How do you prep this? One of the ways before they go home at the end of class is you can give them 5 or 10 minutes, maybe 5 depending on how long your class periods are, to prep their notes for the night. So let's write down what our purpose is. Maybe it's one single purpose. What is our purpose for taking notes? It is to da-da-da-da-da-da-da, and they literally write it down in their notes. Step 2. Let's circle that verb. What am I asking you to do? I want you to explain the process of whatever. Okay. So, A, verb, process. What am I doing? Verb, explain. What am I explaining? The process for da-da-da. Okay. My capital A might be step 1 in the process. My capital B might be step 2 in the process. My capital C might be step 3 in the process. And then there's details that go under each one of those. They're learning how to take outline structured notes. It's all purposeful. You're controlling it completely by giving them direction. And now they can start to feel confident that when you say, look in your notes to learn about this, that they indeed took notes on that. I'll give you a quick story about my sister, who is long since a graduate of college, but when she was taking an AP history class in Big Bear, that's where I grew up and where she grew up, she failed her first AP exam. Now this is a really smart girl. She doesn't fail anything. She got a full ride to UCLA through an academic scholarship. She failed her history test, her first test, and she called me and she said, John, what do I need to do? How can I take better notes? I feel like I'm taking more notes than the book has text. And I drove up to Big Bear. I was living in San Diego at the time. I drove up to Big Bear, and I talked with her about what is your thought process when taking notes. And she says, everything seems important to me. I'm taking everything down. She says, look at all these copious notes that I have. And I said, but you're not getting any of the information that your teacher wants. And she says, yeah, and it's really frustrating. So we sat down and we started talking about what is important in a text, what isn't important in a text. Your third, fourth, fifth, sixth grade students will not be able to sit down and say, this is what's important in text, this is what's not important in text. They're not going to have those tools, those internal tools, those reading skills. We have to build those. And one way we can do that is through purpose-driven reading. Questions so far? That's one segment of today, is the purpose-driven reading, and I wanted to kind of introduce that. I can show you things about purpose-driven reading, I can elaborate, I can give more examples, or I can move on to the next phase.
How are you feeling? Can you answer his question though? Like, what do you want?
Yeah, I can hear the questions if you guys want to say them verbally, or you can type them in.
I think they said that they're ready to move on.
Oh, they're ready to move on. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. I thought you said we can do whatever you want. I was like, perfect. That's awesome. All right. How much reading is being done at home, can I ask?
My students are set at 30 minutes a night.
And is that fiction or nonfiction?
It's their choice within their reading level.
Okay. Is there go ahead.
Their grade length, their passage probably takes about 15 to 20, and it's fiction and nonfiction probably rotates like every other day.
Okay.
Fourth grade?
We say 30 minutes a week.
30 minutes of reading. Okay. Now, are there expectations for note-taking then? Is that a skill? Did I just go through this exercise and it not apply to you guys?
In class, they were note-taking.
In class they're note-taking. Okay. So hopefully you can see. Hopefully you can easily see a transition or an application to the classroom where you help them set up their class notes, and then when working in pairs, in groups, or independently, they can create that reading and writing plan, and they can fill it out while you walk around the room, check in, make sure they have the right structure. This is something you guys can do school-wide. This is something that can work very easily for you. It gives all your kids a clear structure, and it's not extremely complex. There's not a lot of parts to it. It's very simple. It's a graphic organizer. It teaches them outlining. It keeps them on focus. It kind of pushes you into a place where you have to come up with a reading purpose. You can't just give them reading assignments and not tell them what the purpose is. And giving them a purpose like, I want you to know more about this group of people, it probably isn't good enough. They need to really know what they're to do with this text. They have to really understand what their brain is supposed to do. Am I supposed to summarize? Am I supposed to identify? Am I supposed to clarify? Am I supposed to predict? Am I supposed to analyze, infer, examine? Am I supposed to evaluate? I mean, there are so many things that your brain can do to a text. We need to be clear what we want our kids to do. We need to be clear on, and you probably are. You just might want to consider articulating that to them, and if you're already doing that, then maybe take that to the next step and put it in print. If you're already doing that, take it to the next step and transform it into an outline. And if you're already doing that, then great. Then your kids should be very successful at taking notes. I'm going to go back to my screen, and I'm going to talk about the reading process that you guys have heard about. And there's some new updates that I wanted to share with you that will help with in-class reading. If you go back to reading nonfiction, you guys have seen this already. So Common Core is asking us to teach our students how to read closely and support ideas with evidence from a text. That is something that we are being asked to do at all levels, all the way down to kindergarten. It's kind of kind of scary to think about, but it's really cool. We have some great evidence that this kind of work can happen and is happening in classrooms where this high-level reading can happen with guidance. But our kids are being asked to go through this process, and we want to give them a process and not just random activities where sometimes we're reading because I told you to, we're reading this way because I told you to, we're reading this way. They need to know that good readers go through a process, that good readers go through explicit steps, and those steps help their comprehension and retention of material. Lacking those steps create gaps, and those gaps create problems for them when they sit down to take a test, write an essay, participate in class discussion. So I really want to encourage you guys to think about our reading process as the same as kids taking notes in your class. That the note-taking process should happen around step 5. But all of these other things, 1 through 4, should happen before step 5. And number 1 is what we just talked about, analyzing your prompt. So this is your reading purpose, if you will. So number 1 is giving them some purpose for reading. Number 2 is just getting familiar with the text. Number 3 is comprehension, and number 4 is analysis. And number 5 is that graphic organizer, that final move where kids take material from a text and transfer it based on the needs of the task. So if we can follow this, this is exactly what we want our kids to do. And within all of these steps are Common Core standards that we should be teaching. Literacy TA, I know we haven't spent a ton of time together, but isn't anything that you have to do. It's not a program that you complete. It's a way of teaching college and career readiness standards. It's not something extra. It's a way of teaching it in a very systematic, thorough, and effective way. It's practitioners coming together and saying these are some very clear steps that we can teach our kids that they can go through and learn how to be better readers and writers. So literacy TA isn't like, oh, we're going to do literacy TA on Thursday because that's the extra step. It's not extra stuff. It's an overlay on any text that you have. Whether you're reading a science text, 1 to 5. If you're reading a history text, 1 to 5. If you're reading fiction, 1 to 5. It's not about reading time from 1:15 to 1:45 and we do literacy TA things. That's not who we are. That's not what we do. And so when I show these things to you, I'm really encouraging you to see that this is the pathway. So this is for grades 4, 5. So this would be the pathway. Now what's really exciting, and I think we mentioned this, or I said I was going to do it, I don't know if I ever got around to it, to showing you, but if you click on this drop down, there's different reasons for reading, right? So if you're squinting right now, we have read for main ideas, read and predict, read analytically, read argument, read collaboratively, read for structure. So if I want my kids to focus more on, let's say, R5 and R3, which are text structure standards, I'm going to click on read for structure, and these activities refresh, and now they're about text structure. So now I'm teaching, remember I just said R3 and R5, I am kind of a dork, I've memorized the standards, but do you see R3 right here, and then there's R5, and there's R3 right here, and there's R5. These will help you teach the standards of R3 and R5. And you say, well, I want to teach my students, I keep hearing about argumentation, I want to teach argument. Well, argument is R8. So if I click reading argument, I should start to see R8, and here it is, R8, R8, R8. So if I put a text in front of my students in class, I don't just grab identifying evidence from literacy TA and have my kids complete that graphic organizer. I take them through this whole experience. I take them through every part of this. So if I'm taking notes in class, they're going to go through a reading process. If I'm taking my kids through reading an argument or a speech, They're going to go through this whole reading process. And again, you might say, John, this is going to slow us down so much. It's going to take us forever. I know that the old California standards pushed us to kind of cover material and get things done and memorize, 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 and that's what we were being told that we had to do. But when you talk about the new standards and you talk about what kids need to know today and the kind of conversations they have to have about text today, it's different than what it was. And a lot of the great things that you do and a lot of the practices are still absolutely 100% applicable. Probably 80, 90% of what you do is applicable. But maybe the explicitness in what you did needs to be brought to the surface. Maybe you need to fine-tune and refine a few things. And I know that the workbooks have not been a great hit, I've heard. But the workbooks were not designed for you to be in a program. The books were designed to show you how skills progress over time. The workbooks, which we don't call workbooks, we call them activity books, are designed to show you how good readers read and the choices that they make as they go through. And so it's really a roadmap that you could put your kids through by giving them that book. And if you don't want to, then you don't have to. You can use the website and go through the same process. It's all aligned the same way. But we have, say, 26 activities in each experience, and we did that because we wanted to give you choice. Some of you like collaborative activities. Some of you like independent activities. Some of you like summary activities. Some of you like analysis activities. So we wanted to give you a number of options in that book so that you could choose. So it's really, it's like a guide to help you go from one step to the next and move your kids forward towards mastery is really what that was for. So that I'm not introducing anything different, but maybe I'm explaining something a little bit clearer than I did before. You know, we're not a program, and so when we ask kids to take notes, we want them to learn how to take notes, but you can't just tell kids to take notes. Take notes, take better notes. I mean, I learned that way as a first and second year teacher. If my kids didn't understand something when they read, I told them to read it again. That was my fabulous idea. Read it again. With no other reason, just read it again. And they did. And they didn't know any more the second time than they did the first time. And I would get mad at them because I thought they were being lazy and I thought that they weren't trying. And the reality is that as a teacher, I wasn't giving them the structure that they needed to be successful. I wasn't giving them the reading purpose, number one. I wasn't giving them the ability to break down that reading purpose, number two. Because I might give them a reading purpose, and if they still don't understand it, it's useless to them. It's useless to them. What's the point of giving them a reading purpose if they don't understand it? Number three, I started giving them structure, gave them graphic organizers, gave them ways to think about their text. And within those graphic organizers, I hope that you've read them, they don't just simply say, put your answer here. They model what good readers ask, like the questions good readers ask. That's what they model. These handouts we were giving you on Literacy TA and in the books model what good readers ask while reading. It's not just put your answer here, put your answer there. I've opened up workbooks and they're terrible. They're absolutely terrible because they just says evidence, evidence. But we have actual stems, question stems to get them thinking about, oh wow, I mean if you go to the predicting, I'm going to switch over. I'm going to switch my screen just a second. If you look at the previewing and predicting the main idea, and you go to the handout, you know, we're modeling for them the steps that you take in order to make a good prediction. The same thing you would do under document Canvas. The same thing that you guys would do under document Canvas, walking your kids through. And then why is it Common Core? Well, when you make a final prediction here, I want them to use the text to support it. I want them to be able to go back and say, I made this prediction because there are this and that. The title says this. The visuals represent that. I want them to be able to prove it to me that they can make a prediction that's based on evidence and not based on a guess just to get the activity over with. And then outside of the handouts, we have these guides that are for teachers and for students. And then in these guides, there's academic language, so speaking SL1, SL6, SL4, all of those speaking and listening standards are here, and so you could teach your kids how to use academic language with these academic stems. And I know you guys use academic stems. This isn't like new under the sun, but these stems are directly related to the activity. Let me give you another example. If I go back to the process, and I go into marking a text, and let's say in my 6th grade classroom, I want my kids to talk about their markings. There are these beautiful, ready-to-go handouts that you can project or make copies of. And kids can use these language stems to talk about the markings that they have made in their text and why they did that.
And scaffolds the language for them. So they're business like, and the workbook is just an example to be teaching them to get used to it, but they should be doing this eventually on their own without our help at all. So it's moving them to independence.
Right, and the only way to move them into independence is to actually show them what, A, your expectation is, which is clearly academic language and sophisticated thinking, but then we have to show them how to do it. So that's what our tools do, is they not only set the expectation. So here's a rubric, for example, for marking a text. So these are our expectations, and I'm going to show you how to do it. I'm going to take you through a process under my document camera for 6 weeks maybe to teach you how to attack a text. And every time I do, I'm going to ask you questions. Why did I circle that? Why did I underline this? And you might say, well, I thought this was about note-taking. I'm just bringing you back full circle. This is about note-taking. Good note-taking begins with good reading. Period. Good note-taking begins with good reading. If you can't read well, you're not going to take notes well. They can copy machine all day long. If we want our students to be copy machines, which I know you don't, I definitely don't, then great. Then have them recopy the book. But we want them to be able to make sense of the text that they're reading. And in order to do that, we have to help them, and we scaffold all the way down. So let's say you are a 5th grade teacher, but you like the 3rd grade handout for marking. Then use it. Great. Perfect. I think it's great. I'm going to be giving a session, a 2-hour session at the ISTE conference about responsive teaching. ISTE is the largest technology education organization in our field. There's going to be 20,000 people in Philadelphia learning about technology in the classroom, and I'm one of the speakers. And I'm going to talk about how you can use this website to be responsive to the needs of the classroom, because I can quickly click on one tab and have tools ready for one type of student, and click on another tab and have tools ready for another type, and they're right there in front of me. I can print them, I can display them, I can make them into posters. I don't know if you guys know this or not, Cheryl, but you guys have our permission to make any of these handouts into posters in your classrooms. You have our absolute 100% permission to do that. We don't make posters for you to buy. All of our handouts are designed to look good on walls. So if you want to blow these up school-wide, then do so and put them in your classrooms so they're a reminder to you and they're a reminder to your students. As a 1st year, 2nd year, 3rd year teacher, I had to put things on my walls. If I didn't put them on my walls, I wouldn't do them, because we're creatures of habit. We do what we always have done. And so I had to put things on my walls, but I had the best advice ever. It wasn't on the sides and it wasn't behind me. It was in front of me. I put the posters in front of me so my kids couldn't see them easily because they were for me in the beginning. And so I would look up and say, oh my gosh, I didn't go through the reading process. I totally just threw these kids into it and I didn't go through the reading process. And all I did was I looked up and saw that poster that reminded me to do those things. So one little trick I learned from an excellent teacher who said, if you ever want to learn something or put it in your practice, you have to put it on your wall. And when you put it on your wall, put it on the wall for you and not your kids. And it made all the difference in the world for me. It absolutely changed my teaching. And then once you get familiar with that poster and it becomes part of your everyday routine, you move it more towards the classroom center, and then you put new ones in the back of the wall. And those are the ones that you work on, but always going back to the ones that are starting to fill your room now of this wonderful pedagogy, this wonderful teaching pedagogy in your class. You know, teaching isn't about content, it's about how you teach. It's about the way kids learn. And I can't tell a better way to teach kids than to teach them how to read on their own. And the only way they can read on their own is if I take them through a process every single time. Every single time. And that process is consistent in second grade, and third grade, and fourth grade, and fifth grade. And then there's an expectation that at the end of the process there's a product that comes out. And that product is some sort of outlining, which we're going to, this is my third phase today, is graphic organizers. So I talked to you about one type of graphic organizer, the reading writing plan, but we have many more. We have many more to help you. Questions so far while I switch over to the next phase?
We do, actually. We've been getting PDs on different note-taking strategies, like 2-column, 3-column notes.
Yep.
Questions go in on the left and the answers go on the right, Cornell notes.
Yep.
I'm not quite sure. The teacher put interactive notes.
Oh, yeah. Sure.
Okay. And how can students incorporate your outline with the above strategies at home?
Yeah, sure. Well, first of all, my knowledge of Cornell Notes is pretty extensive. I was an avid teacher for 11 years. I am not allowed to talk about Cornell Notes because they're licensed by Avid. But what I can say is my experience in the classroom with Cornell Notes, and they're great. They're a little top-heavy in the sense of how much you have to do to get ready to write them, and then if you follow the Avid way, you know, I think there's 11 or 12 steps to completing Cornell Notes, so it's a little extensive. As an Avid senior teacher, I never went through the 11 steps because kids don't have that kind of time for their notes. But what the Cornell Notes offers is a structure, a left side and a right side. A left side that's 1/3 and a right side that's 2/3. So that's predictable. They can fold their paper. It's very easy. What Cornell Notes also offer is an approach. So I write my questions on the left. I write my information on the right. When I don't know something at home, I write a question, and then I come back to school and I ask that question. That's the ideal way of using Cornell Notes. And then I go back to my notes and I reread them, which you can go back and reread in notes. So the outline notes, if you guys are learning Cornell through Avid, then the outline notes fit perfectly into there because it's just an outline. So the left side is flexible enough in Cornell Notes that you can include topics, vocabulary words, anything. So if you wanted to see Cornell Notes as the reading writing plan, the reading plan goes on the 1/3 side and the writing plan goes on the 2/3 side. On the left-hand side, you would write your verbs from the reading purpose, and then on the right-hand side, you would write what the verb asks you to do, which is like, you know, identify, circle, 3 elements of, and then you would write the 3 elements, and then 1, 2, 3 on the right-hand side. So this Cornell Notes in the most generic sense, this is not what Avid intends, but in the most generic sense is a structure. It's a piece of paper that's folded a certain way that gives kids a place to write different ideas in different places. It's a graphic organizer. When you're talking about interactive notes, so if you are using interactive notebooks in science or history, you most certainly can include the reading writing plan and interactive notebook if you're using it the way I think you're using it, which is one side is for information and the other side is either for exploration or cutting and pasting and gluing in types of resources or diagrams. If you're doing that kind of stuff in interactive notebook, the Do What Outline works, or the reading writing plan works perfectly, because all you're doing is using that as a structure to take your notes. So wherever you take your notes, whether it be an interactive notebook or it be in Cornell Notes style in a Avid binder, if you will, then there's no intrusion. And because I'm a teacher and because I have so much experience teaching AP, Avid, EL, remediation, college, university, rhetoric and writing, English. I've taught now 7th grade, 8th grade. I know what toes not to step on, and I know what teachers go through to just do their job. I know what it takes just to do one day of work as a teacher. So we never do anything that says you've got to do it this way or you're out, or if you don't follow this program, you're done for. Everything we do is so flexible, which is not to be confused with it doesn't matter. It's just it fits. The word flexible means it fits, it works. So our reading writing plan as a pedagogy and as an approach to reading and taking notes fits into anything. Interactive notes, it fits into online notes. If some of you in the room have your kids take notes on iPads or Notepad or anything like that, Goodreader, it works because it's just, I'm trying to teach kids how to think. What Literacy TA is doing is trying to teach kids how to think about notes, how to think about text, how to ask those questions, and so then we give you these handouts to help you see what it is we're asking them to do. That's all. Does that help?
Yes.
It would just, I was just trying to think of, like, the kids are learning it one way. It's good to keep it that way because they're getting used to making their notes a certain way. So I think you were very good at explaining how you could take that an outline style and apply it to any type of note-taking strategy.
Right. Yeah, and good, and I'm glad it's coming out clearly because you summarized my intention very accurately. We want to, there isn't one approach. There isn't one approach that is going to fix all or address all the needs of kids, and there's not one little program that you can plug in. But there's a lot of great ways to blend what we're learning from different experts in the field and put together this tremendous resource. But what you said, I think, is really important. Kids have to do something that's predictable, something that they have learned to do and can do over and over and over, and I don't want you to mess with that. I want that to be a focus. But if you can include some of these things, for example, marking a text, you could have the kids cut out the activity and put it in their interactive notebook and glue it in. Or the sentence starters, they can cut those out and glue it in. If they're going to have a discussion, and they can open up their spiral notebook and have those discussion starters right there in the Socratic circle or in the fishbowl or in the debate or wherever it is you guys are engaging in the discussion. And you're now using part of our resource to do better what you're intending to do with your kids. And that's what we were all about. Okay, let me share with you our note-taking page. So I'm going to go over maybe two things. I'm going to turn on the showcase for note-taking.
Jonathan, as you're switching it over,
Yeah.
the way this has been set up with Mr. Garcia is that you have in the workbooks, there's experiences that we take the kids through.
Yes.
Okay, so what would be the best experience for them to all try this time with what you're doing right now? Can you give, you're giving an assignment?
Yeah, let me pick up the. Are you guys using the Rising Up book or Reading First? Reading First mostly. So in the Reading First book, we have. So if I just jumped into Experience 2 just for conversation's sake. We have the students polling vocabulary for the reading that's coming up. And then we have them jumping into predicting main ideas, writing in the margins. Now, do you guys have the Reading First book that has the prompt analysis in it? Are your books thin and easy to kind of roll up, or are they a little bit thicker? And I only ask that because the ones that are a little bit thin, or I can ask you this: are they perforated? Are the pages perforated?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, good. So you should have. I thought we put in there at least the analyzing a prompt. Is that in there for Reading First? Is that activity in there? It should be in the first couple of pages of every experience.
Yeah. Page 11. The verbs and underlining your tasks.
And then what do you see on the next page? Is there a reading and writing plan in the next page?
Yes.
Okay. So here's what I would do. I would choose an experience with my professional team. You could choose anyone between 1 and 4. I wouldn't go much further because the writing gets a lot harder. And I would, as a team, sit around and say, which one do we want to use? And let's say 3. Let's use number 3. Okay. Now, which skills are we going to teach? I don't want you to teach them all. It's just way too many. 2 or 3 or 4 at the most. I mean, doing 20 activities is just too much. So let's choose a few. But you probably, before you do that, should choose your reading purpose. Because your reading purpose, those skills will support the reading purpose. See, I almost made a mistake by telling you to choose skills before your reading purpose. Because then they're not going to match. So you have to choose your reading purpose first. What do you want them to know? Then of these activities that are in this book, which ones will help our kids get to that information? Do the do what outline or the reading writing plan, but you have to leave it. It's a skeleton for notes. You have to leave it, do the reading activities, and then come back and fill it out once the reading activities are finished. Does that make sense? It's really designed to be done after, but you fill out the beginning portions before. Does that make sense? I don't know if that makes sense.
He's asking, does that make sense to you guys? Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so it does make sense?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, good. So that's what I would do. I would start with inexperience, and I would start with the reading purpose. Now remember, the reading purposes should be directly connected to what you want them to learn in the text. Then that reading purpose is given to them, and you guys decide what 4 activities do we want our kids to do to help them meet that reading purpose. Let's do our reading writing plan. Let's do those activities. Let's come back to the reading writing plan and fill it out with textual details. And I guarantee you, whatever you ask them to write, whatever conversations you have about that information, your kids are going to blow you away. They will absolutely blow you away because of all the thinking that went into it, all the work that went into it, all the guidance that went into it. And you're going to say these kids they read this better than they've read anything else. I can, without even me being in the room to show you it, I can guarantee you that that's going to happen. So that's where I would start. if you wanted to use the activities. Do you give them to all your kids? That's the intention of them, but I know a lot of elementary school teachers like to pull out papers from books, so tear them out. Tear out the handouts that you want to use, and then give them to your kids, if that's a better direction. Or you can print them directly from the website. You know, Cheryl, as an option, our next meeting, I have a few more things to go over, but at our next meeting, if you wanted to, I could work with individual teams for 20 minutes at a time, and we could do like a rotation in the room, and I can get right down to looking at reading purposes. We can talk about the skills that would work with it. We could do that if you want, and that might be really useful for everyone.
Jonathan, I think that's great. I think that's a really good idea.
And so we could spend an hour, but I could do it in 20-minute blocks with teams. All I needed for them to come to me with material so that we could work on it together.
Okay, and then we'll make it set up too so that you have the camera so you can see everyone that's there with you.
That'd be nice. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, so lastly, I'm just going to share another resource in our teacher guides. Our teacher guides are the ones that are in green. Since we've been working together, we changed the name. It used to be called Skill Instruction, and it just didn't make any, teachers weren't understanding what that meant. So we just changed it to teacher guides because that's what they are. So this teacher guide is about note-taking. And this is all about effective ways to teach note-taking in your classroom. And on the right-hand side, if you're seeing, these are all the notes, different types of graphic organizers that you can teach your kids. Now, for the are there 5th and 6th grade teachers in the room?
Yes.
Here's something I'd like to challenge you with. It's kind of fun. I've been doing this for the last couple of years with my kids. I used to go to the copy machine and make photocopies of the graphic organizers that I wanted my kids to use. So for example, if I knew there was a problem solution in the text, I would go make copies of the problem solution organizer, bring them to class, and hand them out. And I would say, today we're going to be reading about X, Y, and Z, and there's a problem, and I want us to figure out what the problem is, and then of course the problem, what do you think comes with it? A solution. Okay, good. And we're going to fill this out. Well, now I read a text, and we do all the skills, and then I show them this. And I say, based on our reading, which organizer should we use, and explain to your neighbor why you think that is the right organizer to use. And now they have to think about what's in the text, what is said in the text, how it's structured, and they have to come up with a graphic organizer that works with the text. And it is amazing how that shifted from dependence to independence changes the dynamic and the thinkers in the room.
You do that? Look at the graphic organizers before you read.
I usually make them design them, though I don't give them to them.
No,
I don't
Here's the
organize
did
it.
it for her group. With the text structure, so that if they're, even with their library book, they read their library book, figure out which text structure fit in.
I like it because it's actually showing the different ways of thinking, of either being cause and effect or a push or pull factor, or if it's like a hierarchy. I like that they're actually having to think about their thinking.
Exactly, and again, these can go right into your your interactive notebooks. They can go into Cornell Notes. There's no reason why a graphic organizer can't go into Cornell Notes on that 2/3 side. There's absolutely no reason. Also, additionally, we almost lost a lot of our staff with Avid because we were saying that we only accepted Cornell Notes, and history and chemistry teachers were getting very upset at the fact that we were snubbing their note systems and saying the only way to take notes is Cornell. And then we finally opened our doors to, hey, if they're thinking and they're using a structure, then we'll accept them. And all of a sudden, the Avid community was liked again. But we were starting to develop some enemies because we had become this elitist graphic organizer group on campus, and it cut off this potential of having these conversations with kids about, why would I use a 2T chart versus a 3T chart? Why is this not a compare and contrast? Is there a sequence of events happening? So do I need a timeline or not? So it's very interesting, the conversations, by just putting this picture up on the screen. And then, of course, what we would tell you at Literacy TA is that kids draw their own graphic organizers and make them with paper. Don't make photocopies of the graphic organizers. As evidence of that, if you guys look in your books, in your activity books, if we ask them to do a graphic organizer, it's usually just a lined piece of paper. Like, it's not, it doesn't, if we want them to do a compare and contrast or problem solution, it's just a lined piece of paper and they have to make it themselves. We expect them to make it themselves. I have example of that all over the book. We put the 6 organizers at a glance, and then you turn the page over, and then it's just lines, and they have to fill it out. They have to create it themselves. So that's an activity right there that you could do out of the workbook, or out of the activity book. And I just want to revisit that again, because I made that workbook slip. To me, a workbook is information that they're just pulling and writing down, and they're not doing a lot of thinking. They're hunting for ideas. This is an activity book where there's a lot of reading, speaking, and writing on each page. Lots of discussion, lots of reading, lots of writing. So this is a different type of book than what you might get when an organization doesn't think that teachers are capable of teaching kids in the classroom, and they just say, do this, now ask this, now do that, now do this. That's not what we are. So that's the note taking, and I covered a few things to think about. The big piece that I keep coming back to is purpose-driven reading. It has to start with a purpose, and then from there, what you do with it, and giving them a purpose and making them struggle with that and use that to read is a lot better than them taking notes off your screen, or them taking notes off a PowerPoint, or them taking notes because you said, I want 2 pages of notes. Some teachers have told me, if I assign for every 2 pages, then you have 1 page of notes. And it's like, well, how do you know that? How do you know that that's what they need? It's a good question. So we want to be intentional, and we want to put those structures in place. And Cheryl and the team sitting there, I would welcome the opportunity soon to sit with you, even if it's as early as a week. I can't do anything next week, but the following week I can. It's as soon as the end of February. I'd love to sit with you guys and work with small teams, 3 or 4 at a time, and continue to plan.
I think that's awesome, and I'll check the schedule with Mr. Garcia, and then we'll talk.
Yeah, and ask your teachers too, because I want to do what they feel is most valuable.
Of course.
Yeah. Okay, well, if you guys have questions, I'll take them now. Otherwise, I think I've spent my hour and you guys are ready to go home.
Third grade, do you have any questions, or do you acknowledge it? All right, so thank you very much. We appreciate you doing that, and we'll talk to you soon, Jonathan.
Okay, thanks. Take care, guys.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Candy, go home or to your class.